night may be long and the dark may be deep, but the answers are there to be found. Whether it's the normal, the abnormal, or the paranormal, you're in the right place. Let's go beyond reality.
Good evening, good morning, welcome. It's Beyond Reality Radio. I'm your host, JV Johnson. Jason has the night off tonight, and I have to say it right out of the blocks. We have a mystery package here in the studio, sent by a fan, and at the end of the show on the YouTube stream, we're going to open it up so people can check it out and see what marvelous things were sent to us. Now, I'll have to also say, I just finished eating one of the things that came from a previously sent package from a fan, and that was a box of peanut M&Ms. They were really good, by the way, but I got a little chocolate thing going on now. I got to remember not to eat this stuff just before the show starts and just before I turn the mic on. So if you've seen the title of the show tonight, you're probably wondering why it's different than what we've been talking about. We're going to be talking about Reconstruction after Doomsday tonight on the program. We had GL Davies scheduled to come on to talk about true life haunting that actually destroyed the lives of a couple, and he wrote about it in a couple of books. But it turns out GL has had a medical issue, and he wasn't unable to join us tonight. So in a scramble, Orion and Slick Eddie have another guest that is going to join us. This was a guest we had scheduled down the road, but why not do it tonight? And that'll be Bruce Beach. Bruce is a professor, an author, and a creator of an underground shelter known as the Ark 2. Now, this particular underground shelter is made up of, 40-some school buses buried underground, connected, to make a habitat for up to 500 people in the event of a Holocaust, whether it's a nuclear war or a natural disaster of some kind. And we're going to talk to him about not only how he created this shelter and what his thoughts were in doing so, but he calls himself a Reconstructionist, not a survivalist, which means that he's more focused on what happens after Doomsday. How does humanity survive? And Bruce will be talking to us tonight about that. He's written a book about it as well. He's got a lot of information on his website that helps people who have similar concerns. And it's going to be a fascinating discussion. We, of course, will take your phone calls later in the show at 844-687-7669. I don't know how common it is. I mean, I know there's a group of people called preppers, and I applaud anyone who is preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. I just don't know how common it is for people to have shelters. And there was a day when we were, in the middle of the Cold War, where students in schools were having fallout drills, and you'd walk through your villages and towns and cities, and there'd be fallout shelter stickers or signs on particularly sturdy buildings, and those were places you were supposed to go if there was a nuclear attack. So we went through all that, obviously, and I don't know if that's still common. I don't know if people have shelters in their backyard. I don't know. But it'll be interesting to see what Bruce says. He's been working on this project since 1985, and he's anxious to talk about it. Later in the week, tomorrow night, we've got Robbie Thomas joining us in the first hour of the show. Robbie's a psychic criminal profiler, and he'll talk about his new book called Murder, Missing Persons Cases. And then in the second hour of the show, British ghost hunter Lee Roberts will be with us to talk about some of the famous hauntings that he's investigated throughout England. That'll be really interesting. Friday night, of course, is a best-of show. And then Monday, Cassandra Snow, who is a tarot card reader, will be with us. She's also a teacher and a writer. She'll be talking about her new book, which is called Queering the Tarot. Not sure what the title means, but we will have the conversation with Cassandra Monday night. And then Tuesday, Dina Ray, who's an author and a conspiracy expert, will be with us to talk about the New World Order. So we have a variety of things coming up on the show as we progress here. A couple things to remind you of. Scaricon is approaching, and if you haven't checked out Scaricon.com to see what it's all about, please do that. It's a fantastic event, and it will be June 7th through the 9th in Framingham, Massachusetts. A lot of great celebrities. In fact, I had a great conversation with writer-director Damien Leone earlier tonight. He's the gentleman that wrote and directed the film Terrifier, which you may have seen on Netflix. It's a horror film that a lot of people are talking about. And if you don't like clowns, don't watch it. If you don't like gore, don't watch it. But I recommend you watch it because it was a good film. It was one of the better ones I've seen in quite some time. But Damien is excited to come to Scaricon, as well as so many other celebrity guests. There are panel discussions, film screenings all weekend long, parties, and great vendors. It's all included in the cost of admission. It's a family-friendly event. And we look forward to seeing you there, June 7th through the 9th, Framingham, Massachusetts. Go to Scaricon.com. And then I'll also say, please swing by YouTube. And if you have not found the YouTube channel that we stream on, it's just my name, JV Johnson. You can find that pretty simply on YouTube. Give it a subscribe. Click the bell icon if you want to be notified of new videos or new live streams that will be happening. And then you'll be able to do so. The more people there, the merrier. So look forward to seeing you there. All right, so we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll bring in our guest tonight. Again, there's a switch in guests, last-minute change, but Bruce Beach will be with us. He's a professor, an author, and the creator of the Ark 2 underground shelter. We'll talk about reconstruction of society after a nuclear war. That's tonight's topic on Beyond Reality Radio.
Scaricon New England, the fan convention for all things pop culture, horror, and paranormal, is almost here. June 7th through the 9th at the Sheridan Hotel and Conference Center, Framingham, Massachusetts. Scaricon brings an amazing group of celebrities, including Cassandra Peterson. You know her as Elvira, Mistress of the Dark.
Elvira.
Heather Langenkamp, Amanda Wiss, and Lisa Wilcox from the Nightmare on Elm Street films. Plus, a 40th anniversary cast reunion and screening of the cult classic Phantasm. And many more. Scaricon also features panel discussions, film screenings, great vendors, and parties. It's a weekend of fun from start to finish. For more information, visit Scaricon.com or check us out on Facebook. Use the promo code BRR at checkout to save 25% on your admission. That's Scaricon.com. Scaricon.com. Scaricon New England is being held June 7th through the 9th in Framingham, Massachusetts. Visit the website today. Use promo code BRR with your ticket purchase to save 25% on admission.
Welcome back to the program. It's Beyond Reality Radio. I'm JV, and thanks for being here. Write down the number if you want to join our conversation later tonight. It's 844-687-7669. Our discussion tonight is with guest Bruce Beach. Now, Bruce is a professor, an author, and creator of a shelter known as the Ark 2. His website is webpal.org. He also has a book called Society After Doomsday. Bruce, welcome to Beyond Reality Radio. It's a pleasure to have you here with us tonight.
Thank you, JV. I'm glad to be able to be here.
So you are an author. You're a professor. You're creator of a shelter. What came first in that list?
I guess the shelter is the longest continuing thread there. I built the first shelters back in the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I hadn't yet obtained my graduate degree, so certainly was pre-professorial time. And let's see, and I had not had any books published at that early time, so the first in that series is the shelters. I built over 20-some shelters before I built the Ark 2.
Wow. So obviously this is something that has been on your mind for a very, very long time. And if you say you built the first shelters during the Cuban Missile Crisis, that was obviously a very, very scary flashpoint in the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. You saw something that maybe not a lot of people saw, and you've continued to harbor that. Tell us what was going through your mind.
Well, we are certainly all products of our personal experiences, and I lived adjacent to the Central Railway system and a station in the mid-United States in Kansas, as a matter of fact. And I think, let me get the date right, I was 11 or 12 years old when the news of the weapon dropped on Hiroshima. And I ran down to the station where they happened to keep the courthouse, and went in shouting to people, the U.S. has just dropped the largest weapon ever dropped in the world on Japan. And the response I got was, quiet, kid, we're trying to work here. Wow. And people just did not recognize the significance of it then. And truthfully, for most people, fall behind always the significance of the way things are today. And then later, because I had a little business of meeting troop trains as they all came through, and prisoner trains and so forth, through that was always stopping this town for the engines to be filled with water and all at that time. And so the one time it looked something I'd just never seen before. When I was about 5 years old, my father would take me down to watch the circus train unload. And here these people were getting off in the strangest costumes and all. And I thought, what in the world is this? Is this a circus train or what? Crossing my mind. And I went up to them, and they said, "Oh no, we're." I said, "Oh, what is this?" To the fellow. He says, "Oh, we're on our way to San Francisco to try again to form the world government." The first time they tried was with the League of Nations in San Francisco, and so this is why they were returning there after the Second World War to do this for the United Nations. And to form this world government. So I was right there to witness these things, although as a child I did not realize what I was witnessing.
Right.
There it was. So that's what prompted me. I was always there at the fore of it. I went into the military at the age of 17, and I ended up in the Arctic, and there the jets went out to intercept the Russian bombers. I was in the control tower, and it was the night time was 6 months long, as we say, and suddenly the doors on both ends of the hangar would go zooping up, and we'd be told clear the runways, and here the fellows had jumped in their jets, and they pulled the plug, and it fired up right inside the hangar, and didn't even slow down. Came out on the runway and went flashing off with its afterburners up into the night and disappeared as it went to check to intercept these bombers. So this was just a part of my life that from the beginning, and later I became a radiological scientific officer. I'm the only civilian one in Canada, and so my life was just a part of this from the very beginning.
So as you look back over the years, you built the first shelter during the Cuban Missile Crisis back in the early 60s. You have been building shelters ever since. I think if I read the information correctly, the Ark II, you started in 1985. You can correct me if I'm wrong about that. But along the way...
it was actually 1979.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we completed putting in the 42 school buses in 1985.
Gotcha. Okay, so as you look over this timeline, and, we've had many flashpoints during this time frame.
Falkland Islands, and
as you
many.
As you look at those, just anecdotally, where do you think we may have been the closest to a nuclear holocaust along that timeline?
Today, absolutely,
really?
Without except a question, it is today, and it's not I alone who believe that, and that is the opinion of the most informed authorities on the subject, and those who publish in what is called the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, and they have just recently put the doomsday clock the closest to midnight that it's ever been. and we just don't have. It should be closer yet than what it is, but it's only a couple of minutes before midnight at this moment.
And what concerns you the most? What makes you most convinced that we are that close? Is it a nation like Russia, or is it a rogue nation that gets a hold of a nuclear bomb and starts something?
Well, the opinion of these many experts and is that that there have been so many countries who have now come into possession of these. Everybody from North Korea and Iran and so forth. But particularly, the greatest concern to every U.S. president has, for the last several decades, has been that of what's called the line of control, the LOC, which is through Afghanistan and Pakistan and between there and India. And this came up from the partition of India, and the water rights. The source of the water is on one side of the line of control, and the complete dependency upon it is on the other side of the line of control. And every president has said the most dangerous area, where they think it will begin when it begins, is there. Also, for those who are inclined to the area of biblical prophecy, there's indication there that Pakistan will be the first to use a nuclear weapon. They'll use it against India. And they're very clear about this, the diplomats and everybody today in that area, saying we will use it, and because India have such superior forces to us. Your population is so immense compared to ours. If you do this, we will use a tactical nuclear weapon. And India replies, we do not consider any difference in nuclear weapons. You use the least little nuclear weapon, and we will drop on you what we have, which is immensely more. And so people have lined up on this various sides of things, and every week we hear of greater problems with the Taliban and
there are a lot of flashpoints. Sorry, Bruce, we have to go to break. We'll pick up our conversation on the other side. It's Beyond Reality Radio. Did you know that online retailers like Amazon have constant deals that can save you money on the things you buy every day? It's no joke. Save 40%, 50%, even 80% on great products, and all you have to do is know about them. Noodle Shark is the way to be alerted when something good is coming your way. Noodle Shark is the social media page that lists great deals that not only save you money, but give you the deals before anyone else has them. All you have to do is find Noodle Shark on Facebook. Search it as The Noodle Shark. That's The Noodle Shark, because you deserve to save too. Become a shark and save. Welcome back to the program. It's Beyond Reality Radio. I'm JV, your host tonight. We're talking with Bruce Beach. Bruce is not a survivalist. He's a reconstructionist. And Bruce, that's an important distinction. Your work is not necessarily about surviving, although you have to survive to reconstruct, but you're focused on what happens after the bombs fall, right?
That is correct. More correctly, after the bombs stop falling.
Right.
And what we want to do is put back a new world that's a better world than the present world. And the question is, what caused this great, horrendous event that is about to transpire? And it's a natural event in the progress and development of a civilization. It's immense cosmos that we are in, and there's undoubtedly races of beings on millions of, in fact, billions of planets throughout the universe, and coming to maturity, and then finally they fall away and new races begin, just like fruit appears on trees and in different parts of the world on different trees at different times. So is humanity. So humanity starts out and goes along this long stage, and we're at adolescence. And adolescence rebels, and adolescence is immature, and adolescence has potential, and adolescence does marvelous things, but adolescence is adolescence, and that is where humanity is today. We're going through this stage, which is going to lead to our maturity. And the question is, what's the maturity of humanity going to be like?
Does humanity's maturity necessarily mean destruction?
It means, just as the teenage psyche goes through a stage that is troubling, it goes through this chemicalization, that where we take a system and we're going to make a change from the one stage of the caterpillar to the butterfly. It's a very, very disturbing action, this action of birth, from leaving the womb to being outside the womb. And so humanity is leaving this womb of immaturity that it's been in, an immaturity that has been simply materialism and not understanding the higher nature and realities of humanity. We're at the point now that many people, when we speak of being beyond reality, that the reality that they see is an illusion. It is not the true reality of existence, and humanity is about to make that transition. It won't be sudden. It'll take centuries, and it will be a disturbing transition. But yes, at the outset of it, we're going to eliminate most of the present population, and the people will see new purposes in life. And we live in the most amazing time that one could live in. If you could choose the time that you're going to be born and the time that you're going to live, this is the second most wonderful time to choose. The first being in the time of the prophet of whatever religion one might be, whether it's Hindu and Krishna or Islam and Muhammad or whatever, to be in the presence of your prophet, Christianity, of course, and Jesus or whatever. But the second most beautiful time is the time foretold to all of the religions, when there would become a time of maturity of humanity. This is the time that the prophets and all who look forward desired to live in. And this is the greatest time of opportunity of service to humanity and really to God. That's the purpose of all life, is to fulfill the purpose of creation. And that we're on the verge of the beginning of the fulfillment of the creation of humanity.
It's kind of hard to accept, I guess, the idea that now would be such a splendid time to be alive when we're talking about destruction. But I think your message here is that it's like an albatross rising from the ashes on the other side of this. Is that what you believe?
It's the phoenix rising.
I'm sorry, Phoenix. Phoenix, exactly. The albatross is something completely different. Yeah.
Not many consider me the albatross. Okay, but okay, yes. That is, we're about to go through the fire, and so hence we prepare for this. You're talking to someone who's older than dirt, and people should know this. I mean, I've been working on Ark 2 longer than Noah worked on Ark 1. They say he spent 40 years building it, and I'm approaching 60. I'm talking about my age is way beyond 60. I'm talking about 60 years that I've been working on this thing of nuclear survival and preparation. When I started out, I was working on nuclear survival. That's all. I had the same concern others did back in the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis. My word, look what... And I had more insight into it than most of them did because having been in the service and having been in the positions that I'd been, so I knew what this stuff was about. And I was... so I had that concern. But with time, one progresses. I've gone all through all the stages of all the preppers of bug out and bug in and prepare to survive and live off the land. And every thought that any prepper thinks today, I've heard those many, many times over. But we reach the point that we realize it's not just about us. It's not just about our children. It's about humanity, and that we must prepare for the continuation of humanity, and that's what ARC 2 is about.
Let's talk about what ARC 2 is before we get into more of this discussion so that can serve as kind of the backdrop of what we're talking about. Tell us exactly what this shelter is.
Well, the shelter is publicized, at least, as the largest personal built shelter in the world. People, you have to put a lot of qualifications on that because in our organization there are two larger shelters. One out in Hawaii, which was built for the big guns and store the ammo and all for them on the big island there in Hawaii, and the other is and another one is they've taken the Titan missile site. So these are large shelters, but I built this one out of 42 school buses, and I paid for it. The government didn't pay for the building of it, as these other two that I've just mentioned here. And so the purpose of the shelter, we tell people, is really is sort of an underground orphanage, and it serves its mission is several-fold. One is as an orphanage, another is as a refugee center where we can be able to feed them and provide them a shelter briefly before we send them on their way, and a distribution center to other locations for survival, for food and so on and so forth. So those are the missions of the shelter on the surface as the public is concerned. Our interior greater mission of the shelter is to prepare it for the there will be, after a nuclear war, a large conclave of humanity is to set up a world government that will prevent war ever occurring again will be their goal. And our goal and the goal of the location of ARC 2 is as the base for a universal language institute. That is my primary purpose and interest in life, is that humanity develop a universal auxiliary language. I don't know what it will be, but the principles involved is what we deal with here.
So the ARC 2, you've called it an orphanage. Is it designed purely to hold children?
No, but they make up a large percentage of our population. That they admittedly have to have a number of people to take care of them, and so there will be a contingency of adults. But it's the rules of ARC 2 are like the rules of any disaster or the sinking of a ship or something like this. Women and children first, and a beta-free society save the children, and so that's a large concern of ours, to prepare the children so we can re-educate them and to give them a different message than children are growing up with today, and that's so that they'll have a different purpose in building a new and different world society.
So, the whole idea here is that this shelter is obviously a temporary spot to weather the nuclear storm, if you will. But you have ideas in place and structure in place to actually start to build what you've called a better world, a new world, one that takes a different look at itself and the people in it and what's surrounding them. I mean, this is a more than just a survival plan.
Yes, and it's spreading to other countries now, and it's called LEARNs, Local Economy Recovery Networks, and these the idea is that recovery must begin locally. And we base it on a group of 150 people everywhere throughout the world, that people get this idea, or we can communicate it to them, or they hear about it to implement it, is they form themselves together in a group of 150 people and select from among themselves a number of leaders, 5, 7, whatever, the number 9, whatever they want to select. And these, they elect these by secret ballot and so on and so forth. And these leaders will then determine how they're going to progress, how they're going to survive, basically, at the beginning. And so it's completely grassroots determined. One place they may have a certain set of values, and a different place another set of values. But that group will then combine as a network with other groups around them, and so to form a larger local economy and build upon this and help each other in that way. And so that's the concept to learn.
Bruce, this is a short segment. We've only got a few minutes here before our top of the hour break, and I wanted you to take this time to chat just a minute about your website. It's webpal.org. And when you go to the website, the title is Reconstruction of Society After Nuclear War. And then there's a line that says the above drop-down buttons take one to over 4,000 pages on prepping and reconstruction. Tell us a little bit about what's there, because there seems to be just an amazing amount of information.
Well, the website grew sort of like Topsy, like R2 itself did. And we just kept adding material to it as we thought about the subject and studied over the years. So there's a lot of information there about rebuilding society that gathered from mainly government sources about what to do with all the bodies that are left over, or how to restart agriculture, or how to provide for medicine when the present system has collapsed, and how to reestablish agriculture. And so the list just goes on and on and on as we gathered all this information together, and we try to categorize it there in the various categories. And but it's not my interest today. It was just that sort of a historical gathering of the information as I worked through this problem over the decades, and I would deal with, say, the problem of agriculture and 14 remedies of how to restore agriculture after a nuclear war. And I'd write those down, and then I'd move on to something else. And so that's what way it is. It was just where my interests were at that time. It's not where my interests are now. I still, those things are still of importance to people, but my thought, I deal with many other areas today besides other than those.
And you mentioned local economy recovery networks, LEARNs, as the acronym. And I notice on the website in the minute we have here that you actually have a program of courses related to those?
Yes, people can go on there and go through the series of courses, and they learn how to set up their own local community, how to reestablish their own monetary system, how to provide their own governance, and all of that is taught to them step by step there, so that they can reestablish the society around them.
We've got a great show underway. I won't even tell you what's going on in our chat room here, but we do have a great show underway. We're talking with Bruce Beach. Bruce is a professor and author, and he's also creator of ARC 2, which is a shelter designed to, prepare us for a reconstruction after a nuclear war. And we're going to continue our conversation with Bruce in just a moment. Tomorrow night, we've got two guests on. In the first hour, Robbie Thomas, psychic criminal profiler, will be with us to talk about his new book. And that's called Murder Missing Persons Cases. And then in the second hour, Lee Roberts, who's a British ghost hunter, will talk about famous hauntings he's investigated throughout England. And then as we skip ahead, because Friday's a best of show, Monday night, Cassandra Snow is a tarot card reader, a teacher, and a writer. And she'll be talking about her new book called Queering the Tarot. And Dina Ray will join us Tuesday. Dina is an author and a conspiracy expert, and we'll talk about the New World Order. A lot of great programs coming up on Beyond Reality Radio. And if you're wondering what I meant by the chat room, you go to YouTube, find JV Johnson, look for the live stream there if you are so inclined, and you will see the chat room. It's all part of that live stream. We also thank you for listening to the show on radio stations all around the country. They're very, very important. We appreciate every one of those stations that are on our affiliate list. And we welcome new ones all the time, and we thank the ones that are currently there. So let's get back to our conversation with Bruce Beach. But the phone lines are open at 844-687-7669. Bruce, in the event of a nuclear war, I mean, you must have done the numbers, looked at this rather extensively. What are the estimates of losses, and will any type of infrastructure remain after such an apocalyptic event?
Well, the given expectations are that about 80% of humanity will be wiped out, but 20% is a massive number given the large size of humanity. It's more than population that was present upon the earth in 1800 that to have 20% remain. And yes, they'll have the infrastructure. It's not going to tear up all the roads, and we know where all the passes are in the mountains now. We don't have to send out people to search for them. And when we put it back, we'll put it back much better. We don't have to put it back old teletype wires. We'll put back the signal towers that we use today. Satellites may be displaced for a while, but it won't take us long to. It's amazing. I've made many trips to China, and how quickly they were able to, once they put their minds to it, to build technology up there, and the great leap forward that was there. That will be the same thing here. People think, I very much love the name of your show, because the reality that people see today isn't the reality of tomorrow. It's people 100 years ago, 200 years ago, certainly couldn't imagine the world that we live in today. 1,000 or 2,000, just totally incomprehensible. And the world that we're about to transition into is as incomprehensible to people as our world would have been to those of the past. And today we think and talk about quantum physics and things of this nature. One of the things that I happen to own is the U.S. patent upon which the time travel machine has been built. It's the largest black box operation of the U.S. government. And here, all these many years, it's coming. Next year, 2020, is supposed to come online. And I actually got a very short trip in a prototype myself.
You traveled?
Insignificant.
Did you travel through time?
Yes, and very insignificantly, but people will do that. And when I was stationed at the one of the 5 air bases where the experimental air bases in the U.S., and with others, witnessed many of what people call UFOs, and was there for the taking of pictures with 3D cameras and so on and so forth. And so the world that we're preparing for is not a world that is comprehensible to the present race of man. And so, yes, I've had a number of that. I owned the largest research ship in the world at one time, and I have owned 40% of the company that built the robotic arm that recovered the Space Shuttle Challenger. So it's not just a one-string thing about the Ark-2 shelter itself. We're talking about dealing with the elements of reality that humanity is struggling with now in quantum physics and quantum computing and areas that most people are just totally unaware of.
As you start considering reconstruction, we've talked about the shelter, we've talked about Ark-2. What happens when, as you put it, the bombs stop falling? Outline for us what the next step is.
Well, at that point, humanity will be completely disrupted. Society will be completely disrupted. There won't people talk about, well, what will you do? Well, nobody's coming to help. You have to, by your own bootstraps, start right where you are and consider how you're going to get a crop in and build society for the next year. And the horrendous situation that will exist, people will reevaluate the purpose of life. And we hope that's the purpose of going through this, is that humanity will not continue on the plunge that it is into materialism, immorality, and so forth. And really illusion. We talk about the red pill and the blue pill and all that, but people are living in a world where they are in a total illusion from the entertainment, from the television, in their cell phones. They're completely disconnected from the reality that there's going to be this break, and hopefully people will start concerning themselves with the true nature of man.
So let's get down to some nitty-gritty here. You've got supplies in the Ark-2.
Very insignificantly, we have a few tons of food, but that for the masses of people that we're talking about feeding, totally insignificant. No, there are other ways of feeding masses of people, and we have a thing that we call survival soup. And our motto at that time, because people will be starving, will be to them, never go hungry again, as we tell them how to prepare to feed themselves in the next year.
Part of this has to be survival as well. People have to know what to do if bombs start falling, and when they stop, there's going to be chaos. There is going to be gangs of people looking to take what you may have, if you have anything. And, this is far more complex than just putting some crops in the ground and hoping you can feed yourself, isn't it?
And particularly in North America, because North America has drawn a line and between black and white. And if you don't wear the uniform, and I'm talking about the black skin, you don't know who your friend is. You meet a white guy on the street, and you don't know whether he's a Christian or a Catholic or a Mormon or whatever he may be. There's no way of knowing. But if you wear the uniform, then you know who your enemy is, and you'd better join up with your brother. And I taught at black colleges throughout the U.S. and Canada. Well, not in Canada. We don't have any in Canada. But I taught it with the natives and so forth here. No, America, you're right, is heading for destruction that people can't imagine. And many people, large percentage of the population is drug addicted today. Not only opioids, but prescription drugs of one kind or another. And not only those drugs, they're into the drugs of their games and their cell phones and pornography and so on and so forth. Their minds are completely preoccupied with things that are just illusionary and delusionary, and the reality escapes them totally.
All right, let's take a quick listener call here, and then we've got to go to break before we run out of time to do that. This is John. John is in Gainesville, Florida. Hey, John, welcome to the program. You have a question for Bruce?
Yeah, I was wondering, do you really think it will be, have nuclear bombs or a nuclear accident versus a chemical, biologic, or a natural disaster that could wipe us out? That's
a great question. What do you think, Bruce?
Many people are concerned, but it's not an either or. These things like Ebola or whatever, and the plagues and the seven vials, as it's called, and those who look at it from that perspective, all these things will occur. Social distress, disruption of the planet, the climate, the health systems, all these things will occur. But yes, there will be a nuclear war. People say, well, humanity's too smart to do that. But the machines decree that when you tip them a certain way, when it starts somewhere, the others join the game. They're programmed that way, no other way. So it's going to all happen.
I just want to bring you back in this short segment to John's question when he asked about what about other types of possible doomsday scenarios or apocalyptic scenarios like biological, whether it's a killer virus that wipes out a good portion of the population, or maybe a volcanic eruption that puts so much ash into the atmosphere that it, blocks out the sunlight and we can't grow crops. I mean, there are a lot of potential disasters. Are any of those on your radar, Bruce, or are you solely working and focused on the nuclear possibility?
Well, the nuclear is the trigger, but all these others, as I described at length about the social disruptions in the United States, particularly over race and but everything that you can name, monetary collapse, every sort of failure of society and disruption that you can imagine. It's all a part of the big kettle of fish. But the important thing to remember and to understand is that this is but a brief line that humanity is crossing, that the future of humanity is very, very long. What we're entering into is a period for humanity of not just tens of thousands, but hundreds of thousands of years that'll continue to develop eventually. Humanity as known on this planet presently will be wiped out completely, but we're talking about hundreds of thousands of years from now. And then eventually again, it will spring up here and until eventually and repeatedly until this planet disintegrates, till this solar system, till this galaxy. All things have their time, but time, space is an illusion in a way too. And we're talking about things now that are just beyond present comprehension. If we were talking with Neanderthal men about the future, that the world that that we witness about us right now, totally incomprehensible to the Neanderthal. The future that humanity is going into is totally incomprehensible to present humanity. But as individuals, the soul continues on. We're living in the most marvelous times. This is not the time of the end. This is the time of the beginning.
That's a rather optimistic and uplifting message there, and I think that that's a very important point, because it's easy to get bogged down in the what would be considered the devastation and the loss of life that what we're talking about represents. But at the end of the day, and in the 30 seconds we have before our break here, again, you're looking at a new day on the other side of all of this.
That's correct, and the rebuilding of a better world. And we've got to build it. We're giving the blueprints, but humanity is the one that has to build it. So nobody's going to build it and give it to us. We're just given life and the opportunity.
Our guest tonight, Bruce Beach, we're talking about Reconstruction after a nuclear war. And Bruce, you say it's inevitable. It's going to happen at some point. And I it's hard to imagine that being the case, but when you talk about the proliferation of nuclear arms to countries like North Korea and Iran, and the next step, who knows who will get them. It seems like the technology is getting easier to duplicate. One of those nations could very well have somebody at its helm that is perfectly willing to push a button, because up until this point, it's been a case of mutually assured destruction that has kept, I think, a nuclear war from happening. But the scenario doesn't have to take too many turns or twists to make it look like one that would be very, very catastrophic.
Yeah, well, the nation that's actually dropped the bomb on other people is the U.S. It's the nation with the most weapons, the most delivery capability, and it can certainly get in there and mix it up with a lot of them. A lot of countries have reason to fear and think they have reason to fear the U.S. on many levels. But not to get into the geopolitical situation. That's not my thing. I have to talk to people and do in my newsletter oftentimes every week about that. But the whole thing is we stand on the cusp of the change of humanity. Just a moment, please. And it's a change beyond the comprehension of people today. When you consider when you might have been born in medieval times, if you'd been there, you'd had to enjoy the situation that was at that time, to work in the fields and your relationship to the crops and the seasons and to the powers that were at that time, the building of the cathedrals and so forth. That was your time and all. Well, we live in the best of times and the worst of times, it's been said. Yes, we have the nuclear weapons. Yes, we have all these wars going on and many, many other things. But if one were to choose a time in which to live, this is also the best of times, not because of the technology that is about us. That's marvelous and wonderful, and it's just very tremendous to live and see all this being developed about us. But the real thing is we're at the time of the change of the consciousness of humanity. And to be a part of that, because that's our purpose of life is to serve humanity, to serve God, to be a part of that destiny for the future. And that's what Art 2 is about. We're bringing people to the future, and it's just the most marvelous time in which to live.
So, Bruce, your family's been involved in this project with you. I watched a video and where your grandchildren are actually involved as well. Tell us about their roles and what you see them and how you see them contributing as time goes on here.
Oh, the ones who are in the videos, my daughter's here tonight. She gets up in another 3 hours, I guess it is, or whatever. She's a school bus dispatcher, so she has to, but she comes to business on Wednesday nights, and then on Friday, the grandson, who much younger in the video, will come, and he's bringing materials that we're using for construction at this moment, and I'm very blessed that I have over 20 descendants. My first great grandchild is due now in 2 weeks.
Did you say great, as in double great?
That double great.
Wow.
And
good for you.
My wife's over 90, and as she says, we've seen it all come, and we're going to see it all go. And we've just lived a marvelous time, and and we're preparing for a grandson I haven't seen in 14 years is coming at the end of this month. The first true genius in our family. We've had many bright people in our family, but this young man's the first true genius, and he's 21 years old, graduated from university already, and has a high-paying job, and it's just marvelous. I was on the phone with him for 2 hours. He called this evening. I just hung up from him before we started. Yeah, a marvelous time we're in.
Yeah. Do your grandchildren, as they help you with this project, do they share the same vision? I mean, I'm sure they've learned from you. Do they see the world the same way?
No, not at all. That they're affected by the world about us. They're supportive of me, and it's an off and on thing with them because they're in the world with everybody else. I'm the only person they know that has these views. It isn't like we have a community around us of people who think this way or what I do, because I live on the internet, and thousands of people throughout the world that I'm in touch with. They're great, but as a percentage of the world's population, not far less than 1% have any consciousness of what I talk about.
Now, I think you mentioned that there are leaders around at least the United States that are part of your network or a network that are coordinating some of these things. How does somebody learn more about that?
Well, the time has worn upon that. At one time, we had a very active group of we had team leaders in every state of the United States, and our newspaper, which we provide a master for, we had thousands of copies, tens of thousands of copies we'd published and had them stockpiled in every state of the United States, and these masters and all. But time has worn on all this, and people have, and I've not been diligent about keeping that aspect of it up. We've become more generalized, and I recognize that afterwards we're going to have to distribute the learned concept, and there's still remnants of what we had before, and new factions that have sprung up in other countries about the world, and so it's of our organization, but I don't really dwell on that anymore.
When you look at the post Reconstruction world, and you look at humanity that has evolved and has matured, as you put it, do you see a model on our planet today that would serve as the blueprint for that future, whether it's a government or a civilization?
No, it doesn't exist broadly enough for anybody to be able to identify it or talk about it in that way. The model is that which I have described of learns that they need to follow, but humanity will struggle through to say we must do this again, and said it after World War One, and tried to form the League of Nations. It failed to do that. The largest, most powerful nation in the world refused to join. That was the United States, and didn't join the League of Nations. It came to end, so we had another World War. And they said, "Oh no, we just got to stop doing this." So we'll form a United Nations, and the United States says, "Well, okay, we'll join, provided that we have veto rights." And now, so the multiple nations, 5 nations Security Council was given veto rights, and the United States says, "Oh, forget that. We're going to do what we want to be anyway. We're just going to be the unilateral power in the world, the one imperial power in the world." And so, again, that all failed. But after this next war, the people are going to say, we've really got to find a solution to this. And exactly, I can name some things that they will do. That they'll come to in decisions that people aren't ready to hear them right now, but humanity will do these particular things, and it has to, and it has to have a world government. Many people listening to us right now say, "No, we don't want a world government. We don't want that." Well, you have either that or nuclear weapons and nuclear disaster, and people are going to find there will be people opposed. That's the Antichrist. That's this and that. They'll rave and carry on, but the world has its destiny.
Some people would look at that scenario and say that there's a real risk that the exact opposite will happen after a nuclear war without any strong leadership by a nation like the United States or any other of the more powerful nations, that small factions will rule smaller parts of the globe and they will all be at war with each other. Is there a risk of that?
Well, yes and no. I mean, that possibility seems to exist, but there's a divine destiny to the affairs of man, not just on this planet, but on every planet, not just with this race of humanity, but with all the thousands of races of humanity that have existed in this solar system, And we're not unique in that sense. Every tree beareth its fruits, and every tree has its destiny and the season, and that we're just passing through the season of this planet at this particular point. But a cosmic view, like I'm talking about, beyond the reality of what people see about them today and see as reality. It's a very gigantic cosmos. And the people talk about a multiverse. Not true. There's one universe, but there's various levels of it beyond the comprehension of present humanity. And it always has been. It has always a destiny. Time, space, matter are illusions that we deal with. They're not delusions. There's a reality out there that I can give explanations about the nature of time and space that people can see that they're dealing with an illusion.
You've introduced a word here, and you touched on it briefly as earlier in the conversation as well, but you said divine. Does that imply that the war itself might have some divine providence in it, and it's a divine transition for humanity to become and act more spiritually?
It does, and it will be. These are stories back in the Bhagavad Gita throughout the Old Testament. These happenings are just, they come upon humanity because humanity chooses the path that it chooses. But whatever path it chooses, there is a divine destiny. When the child is born, it's going to grow up, male or female, no matter what the confusion that people have about that idea today. I mean, it's going to be, and it's going to be a human being. It's not going to grow up to be a tiger or something like that. There is a destiny for each individual. There's a destiny for humanity itself.
Bruce, what's the final thought you want to leave our audience with? As we've talked about a lot tonight, what would you like them to take away from the conversation?
Well, that we're at the beginning, and that and I want them to seek to find out what their purpose in life is, what the purpose of life is, and what we're at the beginning of, and why it's the beginning. That this isn't the end; this is the beginning.
Bruce, thank you for your time, and thank you for your years of effort to serve what I would consider to be a noble mission to serve humanity. We really appreciate you being here with us tonight.
It's been delightful that you've let me in my professorial mode talk about all these things, and I appreciate it. Thank you very kindly.
You're welcome. And once again, Bruce's website is webpal.org. You can get a lot more information about his work there. There's videos associated with that as well. We've got a great show for you tomorrow night. 2 guests will be with us. In the first hour, Robbie Thomas, who is a psychic criminal profiler. He'll be talking about his new book called Murder Missing Persons Cases. And in the second hour of the show, Lee Roberts, he's a British ghost hunter, will join us to talk about famous hauntings throughout England that he has personally investigated. So we'll have 2 guests on for tomorrow night, and then Friday night, a best of program, as is every Friday. And then as we get back to Monday, Cassandra Snow will be here to talk about her new book called Queering the Tarot. She's a tarot card reader, a teacher, and a writer. So we've got a bunch of great programs coming up for you. Please stop by Scaricon.com. Check out this event. You really owe it to yourself. It's in Framingham, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston, June 7th, 8th, and 9th. A lot of great celebrities, panel discussions, film screenings, vendors, very, very unique vendors. What else? I'm missing something. Parties. It's going to be a great weekend. Come for one day, come for the whole weekend. It doesn't matter. It's family friendly, and it's a really great time and a great experience. Also, swing by the YouTube channel. If you haven't found the YouTube channel yet, you owe it to yourself to go to YouTube and search for JV Johnson. Subscribe to the channel. We want to get up to like 100,000 subscribers. How long would it take us to do that? It's going to take a while. Given how long it took us to get to 1,000, I think it's going to take us a little while to get to 100,000. But I want to get there someday. Don't you think we can do that, Orion? Yeah, I think we can get there. I mean, I've looked at some of these other channels. I've got like 980,000 subscribers. I just can't figure out how they do it. You know, it's crazy. But I guess, Russians. They're Russians? The Russians meddling with the results. All right, guys, that's going to do it for tonight. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. I love you all, and it's a pleasure having you here. We'll join you tomorrow night when we resume the conversation. It's Beyond Reality Radio. Take care, everybody.
Beyond Reality Radio is hosted by Jason Hawes and JV Johnson and produced by Alexandria Johnson and Slick Eddie Edwards for Entercom Radio. Beyond Reality Radio is distributed by Westwood One Radio Networks. Stop by our Facebook page and say hello. Follow the hosts on Facebook as well. For Jason Hawes, follow at jasonhawes.taps. For JV Johnson, follow at JVJ Paranormal. If you'd like to be a guest on Beyond Reality Radio or you have a suggestion for a guest, contact Slick Eddie Edwards at slickeddieedwards@gmail.com. Be sure to visit our chat room as well at beyondrealityradio.com. Thanks for listening.